Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye? You'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this your podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a category that we've made up for panel show purposes. For example, this week we're asking, what is the best game that's crap after 10 hours? It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly 10 hours. It's just a nice round number. But a game that's really good for the first sort of like big chunk, for the first act, and then very quickly falls apart after that. So there's a lot of games that are like that. We want to find out what the best one of all is. Joining me today is Tom Orry,
hello,
Alex Donaldson, and James Bilcliffe. So first of all, I think I want to hear from Alex.
It's a funny one, this. Because I think it's quite difficult. I mean, obviously, it's an inversion of a topic we've done before. But I think it's quite a lot harder for a game to start good.
How can you tell?
Yeah, but I think it's quite hard to find games that are good, but do like really just get worse as they go on. And I really racked my brain quite a lot. And there's lots of slightly obvious examples. Like there's lots of examples of like RPGs where the story just falls off a cliff. In the back half and things like that. There's lots of examples that are quite personal. Like there was an era of Pokemon games where I just think they kept designing games that massively outstayed their welcome, and you'd get to like the 6th, 7th gym and you'd be like, Jesus, fuck, let it end. And stuff like that. But I picked LA Noire.
Yeah.
Now, my reasoning is pretty simple. Obviously, that game is divided up into cases, and it's sort of, you know, it tells the story of your career over the course of many years. Basically, Cole goes from being a beat cop to, you know, being on the murder squad, vice squad, all that sort of stuff. And basically, that is where my issue lies. This is going to be a short one for me because, like, I don't really have too much to say beyond this, but it's just literally that this is a game that starts out and I think is really brilliant and really engaging and really exciting. And I think the world that they built of that era, that post-World War era of downtown LA is just wonderful. But it's a really, you would expect as Cole's career progresses, he would end up taking on more bombastic and more interesting cases. But it actually sort of goes in the reverse, where, you know, you start...
Sounds like a career in games media.
Yeah. I mean, so obviously the game's split into the departments that you're in. So your patrol, and then your traffic, and then your burglary, and then your homicide, and then your vice, and then your arson. But even when you're in the traffic squad, it ends up being this wonderful storyline about people, about basically hit and runs and people being deliberately run over. And stuff like that. And so I think the first 4 departments are all great, but then I think the last 2, Vice is decent, but sort of is a drop-off. And then I think Arson is such a wet fart of a way to end that game. It's such a bummer. And I guess it's because the nature of arson, perhaps these crimes are more ones where you can get a little deeper on the interrogation aspects and things like that, because the stakes perhaps aren't as immediately high as when you're literally saying who ran this person over, who shot this person to death. But yeah, I just don't think it's as exciting. And I think when I first played that game, I definitely found it quite hard to get through the back end of the game. And on the last time I replayed it, I genuinely did just stop after homicide. And it's a really good game aside from that. But I just, the order of the cases and the cases that that you were given, and the order in which the desks come, feel like a real bummer.
I remember feeling very, very similar the first time I played it through. I got it back on the PS3 days, and it was great because there was a sense. I remember Charlie Brooker talking about it, actually. There was a sense, because like point and click adventures had yet to have the massive renaissance they've had in recent years. So for a lot of people sort of my age, it felt like almost like a bit of a return to that kind of gameplay, sort of like, you know, finding stuff and making connections. And it was obviously in like a more of a GTA framework, but it felt like a real I don't know, it felt like going back to something along those lines, which was quite exciting. But there was so much of it. And yeah, as you say, it's got that game's got a very strange structure where it's very front loaded with the good stuff, I feel. But yeah,
I mean, obviously there's a story reason, right? Like, I mean, minor spoilers, but you go down to Arson because Cole gets demoted, and it all sort of plays into the story. But from a perspective of an exciting video game, for me, it just didn't work.
The reason he gets demoted is so out of left field as well. Like, there's no hint of it up until then. You're like, what? I was doing what? But yeah, okay. Well, we'll move on. But yeah, L.A. Noire is tragically good.
That's quite a good choice. It's quite a good choice.
All right, and gonna make Tom go last again. James, what have you got for us today?
Well, speaking of things that start out great and then take a nosedive in the sort of after the opening, my face dropped a little bit as you went into that intro there, because I'm sure Tom will back me up here because he loves when I do this. But I've gone for the smartest, arsist, most literal interpretation of the question topic that I could. And so you told me to find the best game that's not good after 10 hours. And I found you a brilliant game that is terrible after 10 hours because it is completely finished.
Here we go. I knew I was going to do this. I knew it.
And that is the absolutely iconic puzzle game from Valve, Portal. Everybody loves Portal. It's, like I say, it's an
perfect
absolutely
game. Rare perfect game, isn't it?
It's only about 3 hours long. I think disqualified because if it had been exactly 10 hours long, fine. But this is so short. You've gone the other end.
There's so many games that you could apply this stupid ass logic to. Like any like Super Nintendo classic that isn't an RPG or Mega Drive game. Streets of Rage 2. Like, Jesus.
Portal's better than Street of Rage 2. Anyway.
I agree with James. It is one of the best games ever, but just get rid of it, Jim, because
so here we go. Let's hear him out. Let's hear me out. Yeah, Jim. Yeah, I agree with you.
We've got another 10 minutes to fill yet. Come on.
So, using a third party in this instance and popular website that rates how long to beat games are, a completionist run through of Portal takes 9.5 hours, if you remember.
No, it does not.
It does, because if you think about it, if you think about doing your own run through,
are you talking about? Hang on, just to be sure, are we talking about Portal or Portal 2?
Original Portal.
Okay, I'm just loading up how long to beat.
Yeah, so a completionist run. If you think about, because there's the main run through. There is probably another run through where you go and find like the Ratman's Den and do all of the Easter eggs and all of that really cool stuff. And then, if you remember, there's a developer's commentary version as well.
Oh yeah,
so you do the whole
3
game
hours.
again.
Yeah.
And I think that, because one of the issues with picking a short game is that you could say, oh well, you just play it again, and it gets good. For instance, I thought about something like GoldenEye, but then you're like, oh, but the multiplayer lasts forever. The thing about Portal is that it's such a brilliant encapsulated experience because, firstly, it's a puzzle game, and if you play it again, you know all the answers to the puzzle, so it's not as great.
Yeah,
you've heard it's it's a genuinely funny game with a lot of really iconic dialogue and all of that sort of stuff. So you've already heard all of the jokes if you try and play it again. And how much more do I need to evangelize about Portal? It's like you said, it's one of those rare perfect games that is a incredibly well executed concept. If you haven't played it, it's one of the best value games that you can probably get in Steam sales. It's probably like 10p or something mad. Like it's really simple. You have this futuristic portal gun where one trigger fires one color of portal, the other trigger fires a different color of portal, and you have to line them up in various kooky ways to complete these different puzzles and escape the Aperture Science test facility while you're kind of forced into these test scenarios by the evil cyborg robot thingamajig GLaDOS, who is obviously an iconic character that appears all over the place in Poker Night at the Adventure, Cyberpunk 2077, all of these sort of amazing places.
Yeah, and lots of annoying T-shirts as well.
One of the great characters that appears in Just Two Things, where you'll have like GLaDOS and then you'll have like Meowth on a T-shirt or something. And it's like, whoa, GLaDOS Meowth, and it's like, just people love that stuff. Anyway, Portal is a fantastic game. You can get absolutely everything that there is to enjoy about it over a really concise, brilliant 10-hour stretch. And that's, again, one of the best things about it, that you don't have to, it's not like The Witcher 3 where you're kind of 10 hours, you're only scratching the surface and all of this sort of stuff. You get in, you have a brilliant time, you have memories that last as long as you do. And it's just a grand old time.
Sorry, is this 10-hour number? Are you saying that's if you play it through again for secrets and again for developers commentary?
I honestly don't know what the number is, but I've seen the number and I'm right.
I feel like this man checked because I was checking to try and trip him up a bit. And How Long to Beat does put the completionist run at 9.5 hours. However, what I will say is How Long to Beat is inherently flawed and always inaccurate because it's user submissions. And so the average is always dragged down by people with small dick syndrome who knock like 20% off their playtime so they can feel smarter than they are. This is something that I've always noticed with How Long to Beat, where people always lie, or at least a percentage of the population always lie. It's like...
So you're saying Portal takes 15 hours?
It's like the nerd equivalent of... I'm saying it probably is a little bit over for a completionist run. I'm saying that it's like How Long to Beat is like when people get polled in the street and get asked how many sexual partners they've had, and depending on the sort of person they are, they will either say less or more. Very seldom will they say the truth. And How Long to Beat is a bit like that, where any numbers on How Long to Beat are always skewed by people going, well, I'm really good at video games, so I beat it very quickly. So they take their actual number and knock X amount off.
Well, so then 9.5, it fits lovely and snug into that 10-hour pocket, doesn't it?
I just don't buy this. I think that most people play it through once and leave it, and that's like 4 hours max, I reckon. 4 hours or so, and that's like you got a lot of wasted time in this 10-hour suggested thing you've gone for here, Jim. And I think
you're telling me you don't want to see the Ratman Den? I want to see the Ratman Den.
I've played this through 3 times in my life over multiple years, right? And mostly,
would you play it again?
No, not unless there's another reason. But
so what's your cumulative playtime then?
My point is, much quicker than 10 because I whizzed through it second and third times.
So are you secretly outing yourself as you were talking about before?
Do you have to add an RTX run onto the...
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah. I played the RTX version for a bit. It's all right. It's just Portal with fucking lights in it.
I think for the average person, 4 hours, and that is like you've wasted 6 hours. If this is like I've got 10 hours to do something, you've just given up on life.
Yeah, in James's world, you've played it for 4 hours, then you've spent 6 hours mourning it because it's over.
Like we don't go,
who doesn't want it?
That film I just watched, good 4 hours, that film. Runtime 4 hours, every film 4 hours long because you watch the developer's commentary.
Are you telling me that you don't, like, after you've finished something, you don't sit and look out of a window and think about it afterwards for twice as long as it took you to play it?
I'm like, I don't consider anything apart from what is presented to me and then I'm out and done. No cerebral thoughts whatsoever about what I'm consuming,
and therefore that's why you need the developer's commentary.
No,
Right. Okay. Let's pick that up later on. Tom, what have you got for us?
Yeah. I mean, I was so desperate to try and do Football Manager again because it had been 3 weeks in a row. I can't remember if it was more than that. And I thought,
4 in a row.
But because I picked Football Manager for what was the opposite of this, I think, more or less, there's no way I could do it. And
that's why I was looking forward to you trying anyway.
I couldn't do it. I was thinking, can I do it? Is there a way of doing it? And it had been so easily shot down that I thought, no, for the good of this podcast and my chances of winning, I have to go with something else. So I was like, even though in the intro you said this is easy, there's loads of games like this. I don't think there are that many games. Most games are quite like the other way, if anything. They're a bit slow to get going and they pick up. They might have a good opening half an hour, like something like they really show off something great and then it gets okay, but it's not bad by any means.
In my head, Assassin's Creed 3 is most games, but I take your point.
Yeah. So I struggled a bit and I wasn't going to go with the cheap I'm so smart, look at me, Bill Cliff option. Yeah. With like I've got the secret that no one's ever thought of, and I'm gonna go underneath the circumvent the rules with my clever ways. I didn't think about that. So I thought, what actually fits this perfectly? And then my mind was circling around a bit about what works. And I thought, and it clicked instantly. And I thought, wow, I am actually quite smart for thinking about this. And it's Football Manager Mobile. And there's a good reason for this, right? Because, and I've said this before, and my case has already been made for this in many ways, in that normal Football Manager is the opposite, right? It takes a long time to get going.
Yeah.
But Football Manager Mobile is the opposite. Like, it's very quick. It's all about speed, getting through the games, and you're playing really fast games. Everything's like rapid, not rabid. And you're like really zooming through stuff, and it's decent for having it on your phone. You just want to get some games done. But after a while, 10 hours to be exact, you're like, is this it? Like, the depth is lacking, and you feel that creep in as you go, and then about the 10-hour mark, you're like, this is starting to feel a bit dull now, because you've done it. There's the depth you'd want after that at a time is missing. So it does really fall off a cliff in terms of your enjoyment, because you want something more. You want real Football Manager, which, as I pointed out in the previous show, gets really good after the 10 hours.
Yeah, it's like an inversion of the mainline Football Manager experience.
Yeah, so that is why Football Manager Mobile is the absolute best choice for this.
That's genius. All right,
let's go. I feel like you've come at it from a kind of backwards angle, and you've shot for the time rather than like the quality of the game. Because are we really trying to say that a terrible half-assed kind of mobile port of what is supposed to be a everlasting game is like genuinely actually any good?
I think they've done a good job for getting Football Manager onto a mobile. But I think after the 10 hours, you've had enough, and maybe 10 hours is fine. Like maybe 10 hours is most that you play it on a mobile.
Wasn't the console version based on that for a long time?
Similar. I think it has more depth, but yeah, I don't know. I haven't played it for a few years, so I don't know exactly how they've changed it.
I am just in stark contrast to Alex. I am just absolutely delighted that you managed to swing Football Manager back into.
It's honestly, it's giving me a headache thinking about it.
Right, let's go to an ad break, and then we'll pick a winner. I've already picked the winner, but fine. Okay, so look, right, James, right, you've tried to be too clever, because
no, I disagree. I disagree with you.
There is not enough Portal to be crap after 10 hours, right?
It's finished after 10 hours. It can't be good anymore because James, you've done with it.
He's got this. You've got to take into James's account of like he's played it and he sits there in his chair for 6 hours. Just thinking about it. And after the 6 hours, he's so sad because he's thought all his thoughts and he's done. But still, that does not count.
Thinking
time does not count.
Bill Cliff's disqualified.
Do you not want to hear Hollywood stories from Roger Moore talking about or whatever? That's what developer commentaries are, aren't they? Isn't that great? That's what everybody likes.
Roger Moore's not in Portal.
Yeah, he was. He's the rat man.
I was genuinely about to open Wikipedia then. I was so confused.
So, all right, and then
this is
Tom,
an outrage.
Tom, as delightful. I'm actually genuinely delighted that you have kept the Football Manager thing up, and I was genuinely sad when you said you couldn't do it this week, and then I was absolutely elated when you did swing it back around. We've got Bill Cliff's disqualified, and now we've got to decide which is the better game between LA Noire Football Manager Mobile.
That's quite close, to be fair.
So, I mean, Donaldson's won. It's no question.
I got up from the recline in my chair so quick then that like I've just put my back out. I had to like suppress a groan of extreme pain.
Oh God, you all right?
Genuinely, I was just like.
Hello Noire was not as well received as you lot are making out, right?
It was.
The first 10 hours were brilliant, though. I actually, you know what, exactly, and when Alex was describing the points where the game starts to unravel, and frankly, get a bit rubbish. It's exactly the experience I had with it. And I think I was really impressed by the game at first. It's around the 10-hour mark as well that you realize the motion cap tech, the face capture tech in that game isn't that great, because every time someone opens their mouth,
it's a technical marvel, but it is totally the Uncanny Valley thing.
Yeah.
And that rarely happens in video games. It's usually only in film, right? But
yeah. Do you remember when David Cage got a lot of stick for saying that the tech they used in LA Noire was interesting, but it was ultimately a dead end?
I try not to remember David Cage.
And everyone called him a wanker, because it's like it's just like the worst person made a great point. But he's right. He was right. It was ultimately a dead end, because they basically made the only game you can make with that tech, and traditional motion capture then sort of leapfrogged anything they were doing with that game thereafter, and you don't really need that sort of rig anymore. But it's interesting.
It's a very Rockstar thing, that, isn't it? To just kind of come out of nowhere with this sort of really interesting technology all smushed into one huge open world, and then just kind of leave it there.
Well, I don't. Did they after they closed Team Bondi? Did they keep using that tech?
I don't think
is any of that used in GTA or anything?
No.
I don't think so.
It's just disappeared entirely.
Neither Red Dead nor GTA are as kind of photorealistic art style as that, are they?
No, it's all traditional motion capture. I got to say as well, the follow up to LA Noire was going to be called Whore of the Orient, wasn't it? So yes. It's probably a good thing that they collapsed ultimately. So LA Noire is the best game. That's brilliant for 10 hours exactly, almost, and then goes to shit. I'm
extremely upset.
I completely agree with that. Well, you tried to be clever, didn't you? You tried to do
get to play the Still Alive card that you could have just listened to the brilliant Jonathan Colton song over on loop to fill up the rest of the gap.
Does
that change your mind?
I mean, what the most overplayed novelty song in the history of novelty songs.
I have a physical copy of Portal 2 signed by Jonathan Colton, and he's a very nice man.
I prefer his song for Portal 2 because I've heard it less. All right, okay, so yes, all right, LA Noire is the best game in this particular category. Thank you so much for listening. And what you need to do, like we said last week, like we say every week, is go into your favorite podcast supplier. Go into your favorite podcast provider, wherever you got this from, and leave us a glowing 5-star review, because it will make Tom feel, better about himself. And I've had it on good authority that it does annoy Eurogamer. So,
can you get podcasts on those other websites that rate things like Yell or Trustpilot or any podcast? Can someone add us to one of those just for fun?
Review.
Yeah,
put us on Trustpilot. All right, okay. Just loads of people complaining about Portal being disqualified. I think that's the first time anyone's brought up Portal. But okay, all right. Well, thanks very much for that. Speak to you later. Bye. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye. Transport links are pretty great here in Scotland. Your cars and aeroplanes, therefore, Nogsman. You want to cross the Firth of Tay, there's only one way, ScotRail. Every minute someone's taking ScotRail. And not curtain rails or humpback wheels, no ScotRail. Up, Glasgow Central, and Bekeithing, Bathgate, Methil. What to do, just jump onto a ScotRail. Your tramlets, get yourself on ScotRail. This daft joke won't travel well, but ScotRail. Sam, wake up, man.